Welcome back. A big move this past week. Fitch Ratings downgrading Milwaukee's credit rating.
The city's comptroller telling the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel city officials were, quote, shocked and not expecting a two-notch downgrade. The decision the result of major uncertainty in Madison surrounding the shared revenue bill, the city's looming fiscal cliff, and impending pension crisis. Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson is here. Mayor, welcome back.
Jared, Matt, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Fitch downgrade by 2 notches. Let's talk about the impact here. How serious is this?
It's very serious. A downgrade would put us in a position where when we seek to borrow money, that we end up paying more to do that. And so I think it's something that's really a wake-up call, not just for us. We knew that, we've got the challenges. I think it's a wake-up call to the urgency that we have to get something done in Madison.
Let's talk about shared revenue. This is all part of what we just talked about in terms of the downgrade and the referendum requirement to pass the sales tax. Senator LeMahieu just told us he doesn't have the Republican votes yet to pass a bill that would remove the referendum provision. The governor said this past week he likely wouldn't veto it if it remains. So I guess at this point, are you preparing to potentially have to ask Milwaukee taxpayers to raise the sales tax?
Well, it's my desire to continue pressing forward, to continue working with all parties involved, with the Assembly, with the Senate, as well as with the governor, to have enabling legislation in order to get this done. I mean, we just talked about the downgrade that we're facing. We have urgency. We need to get money in the door right now, very quickly. And so that's why I think it's important for us to continue leaning in the way that we have been, so that that vote can happen with the Milwaukee Common Council and then signed by me, and signed by the executive, put into law, so that we can start getting resources in the door of the city of Milwaukee.
Does the downgrade have any immediate effect on the city's finances or residents in the city?
It's got a negative outlook. There may be some short-term impacts. Certainly will there be some potential long-term impacts. It's all very new, so we're still looking at what the total impacts will be.
In this push to remove the referendum, is there any risk in alienating Milwaukee voters by essentially saying, listen, the council and I know better than you?
No, I don't think that we're seeking to alienate voters in Milwaukee. I think the issue at hand here is that it's a very complex issue, right? There's the question of pensions, there's a question of discount rates, the impacts on services, and all that. And what my desire is, as mayor, is like, I want to be in a position where, and I think constituents in Milwaukee do too, where we can have police response, where we don't have extended police response. I want to be in a position where we have adequate responses from the fire department. I want to be in a position where the library can continue to be innovative and interact with some of our youngest learners in the city of Milwaukee. That's what's at stake here.
Outside of the referendum, there are several other Milwaukee-specific provisions in the shared revenue bill that you have indicated that you don't necessarily like. What would be 3 of them? Top 3 things that you want out of that?
There are a number of local provisions that affect purely the city of Milwaukee that are not based on finances that I have a strong aversion to. I have said that numerous times. I've said it when I testified before the Assembly. I've said it when I testified before the Senate. I've said it in media interviews as well. Those impacts on diversity, equity, and inclusion, I have a strong aversion to. Those provisions as it relates to our Fire and Police Commission, I have a strong aversion to. Those provisions as it relates to SROs in schools, and the list goes on and on, the streetcar, other things that affect us at the city of Milwaukee level, at the local level, I have a strong aversion to. And I wish those things were simply left out the bill, and it was a clean bill focused on what the issue is here.
Do you see any movement on getting some of those issues that you have those strong aversions to out of the bill as it moves forward?
We have had a number of conversations with legislative leaders on these issues. They know, because I've told them directly, that I dislike the local provisions that were there. And some of those things have been changed. We have gotten some movement on those items, and I'm pleased about that. But there's still some way to go. And so I hope that as conversations continue to happen between all sides, that we'll continue to see more movement on those pieces.
It sounds like if this referendum provision is removed, they're looking at potentially a 2/3 majority vote of the county board and the council. Do you currently have that on?
Listen, I believe that the Common Council in the city of Milwaukee will make the right decision to make sure that we're able to preserve and increase services, that will make the vote to preserve and increase police services, that will make the vote to preserve and increase fire service, and to preserve and increase library services. I think that the City Council will indeed do that at the end of the day.
Have you done vote counting yet?
I've not done vote counting. I know that we are reaching out extensively to members of the Common Council. council. And like I said, at the end of the day, I believe that we'll get there. There have been numerous examples in the past where something has come before the council, really tough questions, and council members have risen to the occasion because it was in the best interest of the city of Milwaukee, and I believe they'll do the same here.
A lot of action in the coming days. Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson. Mayor, thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Up next, the field is growing.
The Republicans set to enter the race for president in just days, all ahead of the first Republican primary debate in Milwaukee. ABC News political director Rick Klein standing by next.